Hey, true crime fanatics, this is Claire.
And I'm Andy.
You're tuned in to the Homicide Hobbies podcast, which is a podcast for people who love to hear about the horrendous crimes that people commit. Enjoy. You're real choky today.
Yeah, I've got like a frog in my throat.
Or a penis.
Definitely not.
You got one of them pubic hairs in your throat?
Nope.
Well, where are we headed today?
Today we're going to be discussing a murder or two that occurred in a place known for their pink sand beaches.
I'm going to need more.
This place was discovered by a Spanish explorer in 1505.
Florida.
I can't done tell you his name because the place is named after him.
Florida.
Their motto is Keo Fata Fartilulu. I'm just kidding. I can't say it.
This is why she didn't say his name.
No, but it's Whither the Fates Carry Us is their motto.
Are we in the United States?
Need another one? You know the song Kokomo by the Beach Boys?
Uh-huh.
Aruba, Jamaica, ooh, I wanna take ya. Bermuda, Bahamas, come on, party mama. You know that one?
Yes.
We'll be in one of them.
Prior, it was sung by the Beach Boys. Now it's sung by Andy.
Well, we'll be in one of them. Which one? You want to pick one of them?
Bermuda.
Good job. And then the closest mainland is North Carolina. It's 643 miles away.
Hey.
Yeah. And also, I didn't know this either, but Bermuda is made up of 181 islands.
Seems like an awful lot.
Yeah. And also the explorer, his name was Juan de Bermudez. Last but not least, if you can't tell, I got really interested in the whole background of Bermuda. They have no freshwater lakes or rivers, so the only source of fresh water comes from rainfall.
That's because they're an island.
But the law in Bermuda actually requires that each household collect rainwater that's piped down from their roof, and then it's collected into catchments and then stored in tanks. Each home has at least one of these tanks as part of its foundation, and the average monthly rainfall is at its highest in October, with over 6 inches that month. The lowest is in April and May, but I just thought it was interesting.
That doesn't seem like a lot of rain.
It's not.
I feel like we got that this weekend.
You can also find the Monstera plants in the Bahamas.
Is that how you found this case? You were researching your plants?
And I don't know why I put the Bahamas, because we're going to be in Bermuda.
It started with a B, so don't trust any of this research.
No. I wanted to give a shout out to a fan named Rana for giving me a beautiful Monstera plant.
One of us.
Sucks to suck.
You know, it's not right to play favorites. Just saying.
So, good job guessing. Our when is going to be June 1958.
I didn't know we were going down to the months.
To September 1959. We'll be discussing a serial killer in Bermuda who was nicknamed by the media as the Mad Moon Killer, the Moon Maniac, and the Mood Mad Sex Killer.
That's a tongue twister.
Yeah. So, during the night of June 21st, 1958, a woman who lived alone in an isolated area was attacked by an unknown man as she walked to her home on Cobbs Hill Road. She received several blunt force injuries to her head and face. She was taken to the King Edward VII Memorial Hospital to be treated for her injuries. She was also interviewed by police and then sent home. Florence Lillian Flood, a 35-year-old woman, was found in her backyard in the early hours of Saturday, July 9th. She was found at 2 a.m. Not sure who was prowling around at 2 a.m. that they found her, but she was bloodied, unconscious, and suffering from life-threatening injuries to her head and torso.
How many days apart? So
the first one was June 21st, and then the next one was July 9th. So about 2 weeks. 3. She was struck in the head with her wooden lawnmower handle. Florence also lived on Cobb Hill Road. She was rushed to the local hospital. The doctor said she suffered severe lacerations to her chin, cheek, and forehead. Florence also had jaw injuries, but luckily, Florence, while she was in critical condition, she did survive the assault after being hospitalized for 2 weeks, and then she was released. Police said the evidence showed that Florence was attacked while sleeping in her bed and then dragged outside.
That's terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying. The police asked her, do you have any idea who would have attacked you? And Florence was like, maybe it was my husband, Leonard.
Oh.
And my jaw dropped to read that Florence thought it was her husband who walloped her with the mower handle.
Maybe they just had a dispute over the lawn clippings.
And police go and they arrest Leonard and charge him with wounding his wife with the intent to do her grievous bodily harm.
It would make sense if you were asleep.
Right.
I would assume if I was beaten in my sleep that the person next to me did it.
Well, they arrested him, right? Eventually, he's released on bail 2 weeks later. I would assume that he had to have been physically abusive, and since it's the 50s, I feel like it was more acceptable to smack your wife around when she pissed you off.
At 2 a.m? Was she snoring?
If he wasn't abusive before she pointed the finger at him, I can only imagine what her home life was like after he was arrested and released. You know what I mean? But it's interesting because the first woman and then Florence, they both live on Cobb Hill Road.
No, hold up. No, because I was just sitting here thinking that if I was beaten to be hospitalized and said that maybe Dave did it, I don't think when I got home I'd get smacked. I think I would catch him randomly stink-eyeing me at all points of the day. I'm just like, that son bitch.
But that's because Dave's not abusive. If this lady is saying that she thinks her husband...
She didn't say he was abusive. She was just saying maybe it was him.
Okay, so if you got beaten in your sleep, you're telling me that you would tell the detectives that Dave maybe did it?
I don't know.
Or
you'd be like... injury, Andrea. I could be sitting there going, I don't know. The only other person who was in the house was Dave. Like, I feel like I would...
Poor Dave.
I think that you might want to check on him because he should be next to me right now. Not beaten, but at least worried.
Well, both of those women lived on Cobb Hill Road.
And where was her husband at 2 a.m.?
So I think it was
He worked nights?
either that or he was drinking. Or had him a lady. I don't know where he was.
Got it.
It's one of those, it's the 50s. So
he could just roll around and stuff his pecker wherever he wanted to because it was the 50s and the little wife was just supposed to be at home mowing the lawn, apparently.
And then he came home and saw she didn't do it and whooped her ass.
Maybe it was like the many times Mom messed up the mower. Remember she hit 2 garden hoses one time, wrapped it around the blade.
And she also hit the bricks she put around her flower bed.
I'm telling you, it's going to end up in the pool.
Maybe. 9 months later, on Saturday, March 7th, 1959, Gertrude Robinson was brutally attacked in a banana patch outside of her home.
The fuck's a banana patch?
Kind of like an orchard, but of bananas.
All right.
But Gertrude also lived on Cobb Hill Road.
I'd be moving.
Gertrude was a 72-year-old widow. By 7 a.m. Saturday morning, Gertrude's landlord, William Kuhn, found 70...
It's that pubic hair.
Fucking say I got a pew in my throat. Fuck you. Gertrude's landlord, William Kuhn, found the 72-year-old woman naked and badly beaten, but still clinging to life. Police rushed Gertrude to the hospital and began their investigation at her home. In the yard, the police discovered 2 sets of footprints, one set from Gertrude and one set from her attacker. They could see she was chased down in her yard before attacked. The police were divided. Some believed the extraordinarily violent and deeply disturbing attack on Gertrude could have been from the same attacker who assaulted Florence and left her for dead.
And how many people live on this road?
Well, it's not a driveway.
Is it circular?
It goes from one side. I have...
because I feel like this is the wrong point to have a dead end sign.
Oh, you're sick. Okay, I just sent you a picture of the map since you're already asking. Don't study it too hard and read all the things.
That means I'm zooming in. Oh, what kind of map is this?
So this is one of the islands. Remember I told you Bermuda's made up of 181 islands? The width of this island is like a mile. So you've got where victim... See.
So it's a mile-long road? Got it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't say, I don't see plats on here. So I don't know how, it could be, block patterns.
You, ma'am, are being difficult.
So there could be a shit ton of houses on there. Or they could be country style.
This is the only map I could find for 1950s, ma'am.
It doesn't say how many, how congested the area might have been?
No.
Okay. We'll assume there's not that many.
But anyway, so some believe they were different attackers and some believe they were the same attacker because 72-year-old Gertrude was not only savagely beaten, but also raped by her attacker. The doctors were doing everything they could to help the elderly woman. She was found at 7 a.m., and by 9:30 a.m., she was described by the doctors as deeply unconscious. There was bruising to her right and left eye. Both were swollen shut. Abrasions were present over the left eye and on her forehead. The left jaw was broken. On the tip of the chin and over the left ear were bruises extending to the left occipital area. The inside of Gertrude's mouth was black and blue with extensive swelling. There were no teeth left in her mouth. Her lips were lacerated inside, and on the left ear was a pearl earring that was ripped out of her right ear. And then the injuries done to her vagina were not done by a human male organ.
Yeah, all right. You know, you say vagina weird.
All right.
You go, vagina? All right. Okay.
And the assailant they were dealing with was a true psychopath. Unfortunately, Florence was beaten so badly, she succumbed to her injuries and died due to the blunt force trauma. This woman was raped and so severely beaten, but also bit by her rabid attacker.
He was rabid?
He sure was. He bit her more than 50 times all over her body.
Oh.
Right. The police said nothing so shocking has ever happened in that area before. It was a very nasty murder where Miss Robinson's attacker had ravaged her from head to toe.
Oh.
The medical examiner stated Gertrude's cause of death was hemorrhage and maceration of the brain due to extensive fracture of the skull due to violence. And I was like, due to violence? Duh. I don't know why that has to be put in there, but apparently it did.
Because it wasn't from a fall.
Yeah.
Or like some sort of car incident. I don't know.
True. Fine.
It was intentional.
I figured that was when they say it was murder. But 2 months later, on May 8th, 1959, 53-year-old Dorothy Pierce lived alone on South Shore Road, which is perpendicular to Cobb Hill Road, when her neighbors noticed she hadn't collected her milk from her front doorstep in a couple days.
Ew.
She wasn't answering her phone, and they contacted the police. The police gained entry into Dorothy's home, where they found her lying dead on the floor in her bedroom. Much like Gertrude, Dorothy was stripped naked and viciously beaten. Dorothy had also been raped. Her body bore signs of a struggle. She had scratches on her arms and torso. She had extensive injuries, including a broken jaw and a broken nose. Her teeth were also knocked out, and her skull had been crushed. The medical examiner believed Dorothy's injuries were caused by her attacker wielding a brick in a sweater.
Okay.
I guess it's the first lock in a sock. Her killer also had left 5 bite marks on Dorothy's beaten body. The specific locations of the 5 bite... I don't know why I keep calling them bark marks.
Better than fart prints.
All right. The specific locations of the bite marks are not publicized. However, it was suggested that due to the placement of the bites, it was a sadistic intent and sexually motivated bites. So I'm guessing 2 sensitive areas. Dorothy's former husband was asked to accompany the police into Dorothy's home. He was asked to confirm that the dead woman was, in fact, Dorothy. He had difficulty doing so because her face was so severely battered and bruised that he didn't recognize her. The medical examiner reported Dorothy had extensive skull fractures and internal bleeding, but her cause of death was actually strangulation. Sadly, Dorothy had been dead for nearly 36 hours before the police found her.
Mm-hmm.
After Florence and Dorothy's fatal attacks, police knew they had a violent sexual predator with homicidal intent on the loose.
They think so, huh?
They're pretty sure. And after this one with Dorothy, because again, it's in the vicinity, if you can see it on the map that I sent you.
I feel like for an island, they shouldn't have too many murders right near each other,
So because they're all really close to each other, that road would become nicknamed Murder Mile, which I thought was pretty sick. But 2 months and some change after the gruesome discovery of the rape and murder of Dorothy Pierce, on Friday, July 24th, 1959, at 4:45 in the morning, 53-year-old Rosaline Keeney, when she woke to someone in her room off a Harbor Road, also in the vicinity of Cobb Hill Road.
Is her name Rosalind or Rosalind?
Rosaline. Why?
Just an interesting name.
I could be wrong, but my interpretation of where Rosaline lived, like the house specifically, it reads like it's a house where every bedroom was rented out to someone else, and they refer to it as her apartment, but...
Like a boarding house.
Kinda, yeah. And Dorothy had been living there for 10 years. She's laying in her bed. The attacker pounced on Rosaline and began beating her with an 18-inch garden hoe.
Oh.
Yeah. He struck Rosaline with such force the inch-thick wooden handle on the garden tool snapped where the wood met the metal. Luckily, there were 4 other people in the house who heard Rosaline's screams, and the commotion sent the neighbors rushing to Rosalie's aid. Her screams had thwarted her attacker's intentions to rape her. Her attacker fled the bedroom when he heard the neighbors coming to help her. Rosaline was badly beaten. She was treated for severe injuries to her head and face. However, she was still alive. Rosaline was able to describe her intruder as not very tall, strong, deeply tan, possibly black, with a local accent. He was wearing shorts and no shirt, or a dark-colored shirt. I was like, what? At that point, the attacker was dubbed the Moon Mad Murderer.
Well, he is bitey.
Right? The police canvassed the neighborhood and spoke with the neighbors during this time that she was attacked. A man matching the description, wearing a hospital orderly uniform, was spotted fleeing the area. So that was at the end of July. In August, a local paper reported the police were beginning to fingerprint anyone and everyone to find the killer. At the end of this 6-day mass fingerprinting, they got 700 out of 2,000 men that lived in the area between the ages of 15 and 50 that turned up to cooperate with the investigation. Well, that should give you an idea of how populated that island is.
Yeah.
2 months after Rosaline's attack, the most infamous attack occurred. And I'm going to be upfront with you right now. There's quite a bit of contradictory information, and to me, it doesn't really matter. Don't come at me if you find different sources, people. And she's said to have arrived in Southland Beach on Wednesday, September 23rd, 1959. She was British native, 29-year-old Dorothy Barbara Rawlinson. According to several sources, Dorothy arrived alone in September, and then there's other sources that say that she actually arrived in May, 5 months earlier, fell in love with Bermuda, and moved in with some friends that she had met, Mr. and Mrs. Thomas Sayers, and they lived off of Reed Road. Now, either way, it doesn't matter. Dorothy decided to go for a stroll alone on Southland Beach on Sunday, September 27th. Again, contradictory information. One version said she left at 2 p.m. and told the Sayers she would be back around 6 p.m. for dinner. And then there were other reports saying she was staying at the Coral Hotel and the staff saw her leave around 8 p.m. to go for the stroll. Either way, on September 27th, she went for a stroll on Southland Beach. Dorothy did not return from the beach. Plus the stress of all the local attacks, police were contacted. An investigation into Dorothy's whereabouts began immediately. Sadly, later that morning, by 9 a.m., Dorothy's mutilated naked remains were found face down off the coast of Astwood Cove by fisherman Frederick Astwood. He owned the cove. Some of Dorothy's clothing and personal items were found scattered nearby, and some of them were buried in the sand. And like the victims preceding her, Dorothy was brutally beaten, raped, and mutilated before her death. The autopsy showed Dorothy was possibly raped again after she died.
Ew.
Yeah. Dorothy's cause of death was not drowning, even though she was found in the water, but blunt force trauma to her head and face prior to being dumped in the water. Dorothy suffered from several human bite wounds because she was in the water, bloody. Dorothy's remains were also gnawed on by sharks, making her autopsy a little more difficult.
I would imagine.
Dorothy's remains had ligature marks indicating she'd been restrained. She had bruising to her back and shoulders. She showed signs of being dragged across rough ground, and Dorothy had severe bruising to her breasts and thighs. As for her mutilation, she had chunks of soft tissue missing, consistent with being inflicted by a person, not sharks.
I'm surprised they could tell all of this.
Yeah. She also had tearing and gashes to her limbs and torso, as well as cutting into her genital and abdominal areas. The brutality of Dorothy Rawlinson's murder resulted in the Bermuda police force being scrutinized by the media. The local papers also stated they believed the killer was a United States military man. They had no facts to back that statement up, but it freaked all the locals out nonetheless.
I don't know why they would say it if they...
I think they were just looking to blame anyone.
Yeah.
But...
try to say it's not a local.
Right. Because I guess if it was a military man and they're coming and going, it kind of gives them peace of mind that maybe the killer left, but who wants the false sense of security? Because the second you go outside, And realistically, most of these women are attacked inside their homes. I wouldn't want a false sense of security. But the Bermudian authorities reached out to the FBI for assistance in profiling their serial rapist killer. But the FBI was like, sorry, can't help you. So instead, 2 officials from Scotland Yard, Richard Lewis and Frederick Taylor, arrived in Bermuda to assist in the investigation. The Scotland Yard fellows flipped through possible suspects and started their investigation. The police put out an urgent request that any persons who were sunbathing at the beach on South Shore between 3 and 4 p.m. on Saturday, September 27th, who have not yet made a statement to police to come forward. And also, by the way, if anybody was there and saw a male person in this general vicinity, come forward, let us know. The Scotland Yard fellows landed on a possible suspect that the Bermuda police had already spoken to. Bermuda police spoke to this feller after the first victim, Florence Flood's grisly assault back in July. The feller Scotland Yard felt was worth checking into was 19 years old and worked as an orderly at the hospital. Remember the orderly?
Orderly, uh-huh.
All the attacks were within walking distance from this kid's house and the hospital. The reason the Bermuda authorities spoke to this kid was because he was the feller seen running from the scene after Florence was attacked. And also, if it was 2 a.m, what was he doing out? Not that that makes you a murderer, or an attempted murderer, but still. Who is this young man? He is Wendell Willis Lightbourne.
For sure it's not Wendell. Wendell is Wendell.
In the 1940s, it was pronounced Wendell, according to Google. So I'm just going to go with that.
I was just asking, because Rosaline or whatever is an interesting name. I'm not an islander.
Wendell, he was born in 1940 into a large family with 9 kids. He was traumatized at 9 when his father died. Since you're a good guesser, you want to guess this kid's nickname?
Let's see. Jaws. Because he habit of biting his coworkers.
Nope.
What?
His nickname was Donkey.
He kicks too?
I don't know why.
Or was he just an ass and HR already told him that you can't call him that ass?
So that was the route I went of maybe he was just stubborn.
I feel like it would still be offensive if somebody at my work did all right, donkey.
Right? But he received minimal education and struggled with social and emotional development, probably due to the fact that the teachers labeled him as mentally retarded and unteachable. I was like, harsh.
Well, he kept biting.
After he was labeled as mentally retarded, he became a target for bullies. He absolutely hated life. He hated it so much that he attempted suicide several times before he was even a teenager.
Too bad he wasn't successful.
Right? It made me question if his dad committed suicide, since he was 9 when his dad died and he was traumatized from that.
Or sharks.
Maybe. There's nothing on how his dad died, though. There were signs of early isolation and behavioral issues, such as being withdrawn, poor impulse control, inappropriate social behaviors. Wendell.
Donkey.
Anyway, he began drinking alcohol at a young age and was admittedly a violent, mean drunk. He also appeared to lack empathy, displaying signs of obsessive tendencies, particularly towards women. More specifically, he would become fixated on a woman he encountered through his job or in public, and he would have stalking-like behaviors because after he became fixated on that specific woman, he would follow her and watch her from a distance before...
So I would call that stalking.
Before eventually being caught peeping through her windows. He first became known to the local police in 1958 at 18 years old, after he'd been arrested for robbing a 14-year-old girl. Wendell was sentenced to 6 months in jail, and he was to be whipped. Wendell received 12 lashes with a cat o' nine tails.
That's it?
Well, and 6 months in jail.
Oh, what was the charge?
Robbing the 14-year-old girl.
I was still thinking the murderings. He got a spanking, 12 spankings, and that's it?
Have you seen a cat o' nine tails?
I thought it was for somebody's murder. That was his punishment.
I don't think we should be whipping nobody.
Well, that'd be one of us.
But just to give you an idea, Wendell was 180 pounds at 19 years old. The Royal Gazette Weekly described him as brown-skinned with short, crinkly hair, about 5'8", and he had sideburns and a mustache.
Well, it was in the Elvis era.
Mm-hmm. The first attack happened shortly after Wendell was released from his sentencing for robbing the 14-year-old girl.
So you learned nothing other than you don't keep live witnesses. Although I guess the first attack...
The first two, they lived. Later that same year, he was seen running from Florence's house, as we established. He told the police when they questioned him back in July, the reason he ran was because he heard Florence's screams and didn't want to be accused of attacking anybody.
Because he was attacking her.
Since Florence hadn't actually seen her attack her, they had to let him go. So when they talked to him back in July, that's why they didn't...
That's the weirdest reason. Why were you running? Because I heard somebody else being attacked and I didn't want to be the one accused. What?
Right. And now, since the string of escalating attacks and the assistance of Scotland Yard, the police bring Wendell in for questioning on October 31st, 1959. Upon being brought into the police station, Wendell insisted he was innocent. However, I done might have been seen over at the beach around the time Dorothy Rawlinson was murdered.
Naked.
But she wasn't dead when I left her. About 5 hours after claiming he was innocent, and she was still alive when I left her there, Wendell broke down and confessed to accidentally, maybe, killing the last victim, 29-year-old Dorothy Rawlinson. He told the officers he also blacks out, and he's done things that he don't remember. Additionally damning, when he was being held in the jail, his mommy came to see him, flat out asked her boy, "Did you do it, son? Did you kill that girl on the beach?" Wendell just stared at his mom and simply replied, "Yes." Through her tears, his mother offered for him to say the Lord's Prayer with her. And after his devastated mother left, Wendell told the detectives, "I could have left the islands last Wednesday, but I didn't. I tried to hang myself. I tried to shoot myself, but I couldn't pull the trigger. I don't mind dying for this. I would be better dead."
Agreed.
So I was going to take bits and pieces of his confession, but I'm going to give you this chunk. He said, "I wanted to get it off my mind. I done it. I can't go to heaven now. I went swimming first on the Atlantic beach. I walked along the beach to where the girl was sitting on a rock. When I first saw her, she was sitting on the sand in front of the beach hut. As I was walking up, I saw a little girl and a very young boy playing in the beach hut. When the little girl and the boy went towards the road, I walked up to the girl. I had my pants on, but my shirt was off. Shoes off. As I was walking towards the girl, she got up and walked to a rock. She was in a bathing suit. She had it on. She had a book in her hand. It looked like a storybook. It was brown, like a law book. It was smaller and thinner. I went up to her and said, "It's pretty rough out today." She said yes, and we got to talking about different things in the weather and the water, and I stood talking, and she was sitting. I grabbed her costume, tore it off. She slapped me and said, "You rascal, you." As she went to hit me with her hand and went over my head, she caught me like this, and he gestured with his hand to his forehead. I hit her. I gave her a backhanded slap. She went backwards towards the bushes. She must have done hit her head. Blood came from her, and she made funny noises. She made noises like, "Ow, ow, ow," like that. I didn't like those noises. I only hit her the one hard blow, and she went back. She had a big, long bag by her. It was a paper bag there. I didn't have any intercourse with her. I just ran away. Nobody saw me on the beach. Nobody around. I ran back that same way I came up, towards Atlantic. But I put my shirt on Atlantic Beach. Then I went to Johnson's and saw Rochester and others. This statement has been read over to me, and it is true. And after confessing and signing the written confession, Wendell said, "Oh yes, I've got it off my mind. You didn't think I was going to tell you, did you?" Back at this point, the Bermuda society was deeply marked with racial segregation and discrimination. Black Bermudians were treated like second-class citizens. The segregation manifested in the area, like with the housing, employment, education, healthcare, churches, entertainment, and the legal system. All of the women who were attacked were white English women. Wendell was a young black man, and due to the racial dynamics of the case, it influenced the public's perception and the speed of the investigation, as well as the legal proceedings. And the reason I bring all of that up is because you've heard of they're entitled to the right to a speedy trial, all that nonsense. But a speedy trial is a rarity, right? We've seen cases where it takes years to go to court. The speed at which everything transpired for Wendell nearly gave me whiplash because he was arrested on Halloween, right? October 31st, 1959.
Mm.
His preliminary trial began in November of 1959, and then his murder trial started that same December. So we might as well say he was arrested in November because it's a day.
Yeah.
So within less than a month and a half, his murder trial began.
Sounds about right for the times.
Yeah. During Wendell's trial, the jury heard Wendell sign confession about the day of the murder. Even though Wendell's attorney, and that was Dame Lois Brown Evans, presented a case of diminished responsibility due to him being, quote, mentally retarded, emotionally unstable, and mentally ill. She also claimed that Wendell was coerced into his confession, but the jury was told in detail how Dorothy didn't hit her head just once, so his story didn't make sense. She was repeatedly struck with a heavy object, and they were told how he beat and raped Dorothy. Throughout the trial, he remained impassive, occasionally just stroking his sideburns or his mustache. Wendell was all, "Nah, her death was an accident, because after I done slapped her and ran off, she wasn't dead." He also obtained the nickname, the man in the wet clothes, because on the day of Dorothy's death, Wendell walked into a bicycle shop when he said he went to and saw Rochester and the rest of the fellers. Mm-hmm. His clothes were soaking wet.
He had to get the blood off.
Well, when he was asked why he was fully dressed in wet clothes, he said he decided to go swimming in his trousers and a shirt. But in reality, he'd admitted during his interrogation, on the way back from his encounter with Dorothy, he redressed on while he was headed back up. But he had to swim part of the way where the tide was coming in. So he redressed and then...
Yeah, had to swim.
To get away from where she was and not be running through the beach naked, he had to put his clothes back on. When the jury was told about the condition Dorothy's body was in and that her arm had been ripped off, most likely by sharks, and that bite chunks were out of her remains, Wendell responded with, "The girl wasn't dead when I left her. She was lying with no clothes on, her head in the bushes, her feet were facing the water. She was a long way away from the water. I didn't put her in the water. I remember I heard on the news Tuesday a woman was found in the water and the sharks eat her. It was on Sunday that I hit her." So I do question what his IQ was, that he thinks that just because she wasn't found until Tuesday doesn't mean that it's the same woman he hit. His trial lasted a whopping 5 days, during which Wendell was taken from the courtroom to the jail cells, and he would walk casually while whistling as if he didn't have a care in the world. And on December 12th, 1959, shortly before midnight, which I thought that was crazy, the jury returned with their verdict. Wendell Willis Lightbourne was found guilty of the murder of 29-year-old Dorothy Rawlinson. Wendell was sentenced to death by hanging, and that was supposed to be scheduled for December 30th, 1959. So in 18 days.
Well, what's the point of keeping him around?
I mean, they did things way different back then. Once Wendell was checked into the prison, he told the guards, "You fellas can get the rope ready. I only wanted to get even." He was referring to the 12 lashes he received the year prior for robbing the 14-year-old girl.
Yeah.
Right. The authorities told the public Wendell was responsible for the other attacks in the area, even though he was only tried for Dorothy Rawlinson's murder. The streets were safe again. His scheduled execution for December 30th, 1959 was postponed to January 20th, 1960. The execution was again postponed to February 3rd, 1960, because his attorney had asked for a psychological report to be done. Following the report of 3 psychiatrists, he was deemed mentally unfit. And since you can't kill somebody that's mentally unfit, on January 31st, 1960, his death sentence was commuted to life in prison to be served in England. Fun fact, Wendell's attorney, Dame Lois Brown Evans, she was the first female lawyer in Bermuda and the first black woman to be called to the Bermuda bar in 1953. She still claims that Wendell was innocent of the charges. And I did another search because I was like, because of the times they were white women and he was a black guy. We've done too many cases where somebody's a little mentally not right and they get manipulated into admitting they did something they didn't actually do.
Yeah.
And because they were getting so much heat from the press, I was curious, okay, so he got arrested. Did the murders stop? And they did, briefly. And then in 1966, 7 years into Wendell's prison sentence, on January 28th, 1966, an 87-year-old spinster, Catherine Tucker, was brutally attacked. Much like the previous victims, this woman lived alone. She was savagely beaten, raped, and left for dead. One officer at Catherine Tucker's house said the intruder turned Miss Tucker's home into a gory mess. The police reported that Catherine was in intensive care in the hospital. She had severe skull fractures, fractured upper and lower jaws, and a whole lot of bruising. Catherine was in the hospital for over a month. She celebrated her 88th year on this earth from her hospital bed. And then the police, looking for anybody to blame, arrested another man, 35-year-old Eric Trott. I did kind of chuckle because you know what Eric Trott's nickname was?
Toots.
Eggs, which made me think of True Blood.
Benedict.
The articles call him Egg Trotts. I was like, all right.
Sounds like I'm not eating there.
When they attempted to arrest Eric, he stabbed one of the other officers, and he also assaulted one of his relatives. If you fast forward through all of that, he's found guilty, and then when he's asked, did he have anything to say for himself, he was like, yeah, I'm not guilty. I don't think I received a fair trial.
Are you guilty of stabbing an officer?
Yeah, sure was. And also, I thought it was interesting that he had the same lawyer, Dame Lois Brown Evans, that represented Eggs as Donkey. And then in 1971, a 24-year-old wife and mother was also brutally beaten, viciously raped, and then tossed into the water. And at this point, I realized I have no idea if Wendell was guilty or innocent of killing Dorothy, or if there really were just multiple people out there just viciously beating and raping the women on this teeny tiny island.
I feel like it's not a far cry of somebody who is suicidal, and then he could have attacked one of them. Doesn't mean he...
Yeah.
You know how we've seen where the authorities will want to throw all of the cases that are alike?
Right. That's where my brain went with it. I thought that maybe he did kill Dorothy Rawlinson, and then whoever actually attacked the other lady in Catherine Tucker in 1966, that seems to be the same. This is an elderly woman who was living alone. I think those attacks were all roped together. And then the other thing I was trying to figure out, and I finally gave up on, is which ones were bit? Which ones had human bite marks on them? Because I would be curious if it was all of them, then I'm going to say Wendell was innocent because there's no way he bit somebody 7 years after he'd been arrested. But you can't really find stuff on that. You'll find articles that say all the victims were bit, and then you'll find articles that say that only a couple of them were bit. So I gave up on trying to track it down that route, but that's all I got on Wendell Willis Lightbourne and the Murder Mile mystery. I question whether or not he's guilty, though.
Yeah, I mean, think that there's pretty good odds he wasn't, but I'm disturbed how many people can get snatched from their beds with someone in the house.
Yeah, right. Well, most of these women didn't have anybody in the house, and I'm thinking that the second lady that was attacked, Florence, I don't think her husband was home.
Yeah, I would hope not.
So it made sense to me if she was attacked and she was in her bed and then she was discovered at 2 a.m. I couldn't find who discovered her. I took it as it was most likely her husband returning home.
Probably so. And if that's what she remembers seeing his face, it would make sense that I guess it was him.
Oh, I don't know that Jason would ever forgive me if I was like, you know what? Maybe it was Jason.
I think he would be crushed.
What a horrible way to go, though. Don't sign me up for that.
No, or the poisonings.
Well, you can poison me if it's fast.
Good to know! Thank you for listening to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Claire.
I'm Andy.
Follow us each week to get your fix of the atrocities that occur in true crime. And don't forget to tell people about us and rate us if you like us. But don't rate us if you didn't. Just change the channel.